Yeah, my name's Nick Tamlin. I worked 36 years of my working life as a coal miner. I started in 1977 and I finished in 2013. I was 22, going on 23 years of age during the miners' strike, and I worked in a drift mine up in Crynant called Blaenant Drift. I was living in Croesero at the time with my parents. So,
around the time of the strike, I think started in March '83. So
84.
84, sorry. At the start of the year, for example, what was the feeling amongst the miners? Did they feel that industrial action or strike action might be a possibility that year?
I think everybody in the coal industry knew that things were going to change. The way things were happening up in Yorkshire and Nottingham, Derbyshire, that sort of area, we knew there was something brewing. Obviously, Margaret Thatcher had a plan in her head to sort of dissolve the coal mining industry, and where it started, nobody knew as then. But we soon sort of realised that something was about to happen.
Did you? What was it a feeling amongst the miners that when Thatcher got elected in '79, I think it was, that she'd be gunning for the miners?
Yeah, definitely. It all boiled down to the fact that the miners brought down the TED, Edward Heath, Ted Heath government down in, I don't know, was it 72 or 74. And it wasn't a thing of being, proud to bring a government down. That wasn't the case. It was a case of, unions were strong, and it was about time that people had a decent way of living and job security. So that obviously when Margaret Thatcher got in '79, she was determined to sort of to make big changes within not only the mining industry but the union fact throughout any industry or factories even.
So just briefly before we get into the strike itself, could you just describe to viewers what it was like actually to be a miner in the early '80s, your average day?
Fantastic. It was such a proud feeling. I started when I was 15. I left school in May and I started at Caira Colliery on the 24th of June, something like that. But anyway, it was a nice atmosphere. There was local football teams and rugby teams in the villages and things like that. Lovely community spirit, all based on the mining industry. So it was proud. It was a proud feeling to think that you were a miner coming from. My father was a miner. My grandfather was a miner. My wife's father and grandfather, great-grandfather, they were all miners as well. So it was a proud feeling to be a miner, and things were good.
And what was your actual day like in the mine? I mean, what type of things would you be doing, just to give people a rough idea of what you guys had to do back in the mines?
We started at 7 o'clock in the morning on the day shift, and it would be a case of travelling a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles into the coal face. Once we got there, it was straight into work. The coal cutter would be doing all the cutting of the coal, but we'd have to keep the roof all supported and keep the flow of the coal going out to the surface. So it was a quite heavy grafting day, but it was good. It was nice to work with a good bunch of boys for the camaraderie, and it was fun. It was fun, hard work but fun. So come the end of the shift, we'd come up the pit and we'd go down into the baths and have a shower, and especially on a Friday we'd call in for a pint on the way home. It was lovely. It was a nice community feeling about things. Yeah. Well, I don't think, like a lot of boys my age, obviously early 20s, I don't think we actually realised the full extent of what was to come. Until it was only until we sort of spoke to the older boys that they were saying this is going to be a long one. this is not going to be easy. You know, she was determined to achieve what she was going to set out to do, and I was, you know, demolish the coal mining industry. So, you know, the feeling amongst everybody was that we knew what was going to be in front of us. It was going to be a difficult task, but as long as we, you know, stuck together, give each other the support that we needed, we could have had some sort of fighting chance then, basically, you know. So
the strike started, I think, in March officially.
Yeah.
A lot has been made in the media about the fact there was no official ballot for that strike. You know, what was the thoughts of yourself and the people you work with?
Well, the thing was, it was, you know, it's easy enough to say that, you know, there wasn't a ballot. Arthur Scargill had it right. The majority, there were 2/3 of the coal miners throughout the UK were on strike. So that's the majority. That's the majority. And you know, we always done things on a majority. If we was in a room and, you know, we voted on something and 9 people out of 10 voted yes for that issue, that was the majority, and that's what we went with. You know, so anyway, that's what we decided to go with. When we did, you know, we spoke about different things, and, you know, is it the right way, is it the wrong way? There was only one way, and that was the way that, in all fairness, Arthur Scargill said in the very first couple of meetings that we had down around different areas around South Wales. He spoke to us off the record, and he said, if we lose this, that's going to be the end of any coal mining operations anywhere in the country within the next 15 to 20 years. Communities will dissolve, and, you know, there'll be no jobs for your children coming through. And he was absolutely bang on. He was absolutely bang on. So as far as the issue of you know, the ballot and things like that, there were a lot of miners up in Derbyshire and places like that. They didn't have, you know, coal mining in their blood like we did down here. You know, coal mining was sort of in our blood for hundreds of years, you know, around here. So it was something that we sort of wanted to stick with. He did mention, Arthur Scargill did mention as well, that there are people up in Derbyshire and those sort of places that actually broke a strike or didn't even come out on strike. You know, a lot of them men were ex-factory workers. You know, the money was a bit better in the pit across the road, so they finished in the factory and worked in a pit. If someone else come about and the money was a bit better, they finish in a pit and go somewhere else to work. There was no sort of mining in the background, you know, in their blood sort of thing. So you know, it's as long as it's short, you know. So that's the way it went.
Can you remember the day you actually walked out on strike?
Yeah. I remember we went to work, and we St. John's come out on, I think it was a Monday morning or something, and I was on the afternoon shift in Coinant, and we went into work, and they said that St. John's had come out on strike in support of Cottonwood up in Nottingham. And are we going to come out and support them, you know, down the same route? So yeah, back to the same scenario. We all had a meeting. You know, the day shift had come out in support, so we went in on the afternoon shift. We had a meeting in the canteen. Everything was put on the table to discuss what, you know, where we were with things, and we voted to come out. You know, and being a 22-year-old, it was a bit more, right, oh, here we go, we got a couple of weeks off work sort of thing. But obviously that didn't evolve. From
your personal point of view, what were you trying to achieve by going on strike? I mean, just your point of view, not Arthur Scargill or the other miners around you. I mean, what did you think you were walking out for?
Well, once, you know,
at the time, you know, not now, like at the time.
Well, at the time, we, you know, like I said, the actual build-up to the strike, we knew that it was coming. We knew it was coming. So obviously, you know, we got people saying different things, that, you know, it's going to be the end of the communities. It's, you know, we're going to lose our jobs, and, you know, once we have children and whatever, you know, there'll be sort of limited places where they're going to go to look for work. And so when I come out on strike, I was fighting for my future and the future of, you know, my children, and everybody else, you know, the young people of the community. You know, that's what I come out on strike for, and that's what I think the majority of most of the miners around South Wales, that's what they wanted. They wanted to secure their communities and the future for their children.
Can you remember the emotion you felt when you walked out?
It was a bit of a mixed feeling about things. You know, I thought at the time that it was going to be, you know, a couple of months. Like I said, the first couple of weeks would be, you know, out playing football or whatever, or go down to the pub and have a game of snooker and things. But we soon realised that it was going to be a long time before anything could get resolved, and we'd be sort of, you know, marching back to work, you know, victorious. But it was very emotional to see. The thing is, I worked with men that fought in the Second World War in the coal mine. You know, so you know, I was thinking at the time, well, you know, they fought for their country. They've come back from the war and gone back to mining. You know, they were obviously miners before they went out to fight for the country. They come back from the war, went back down the pit to work, and then she come along and kicked them up the arse, like. And so, you know, I was very emotional about the way, you know, that we were being treated from the start.
Early on in the strike, were you confident that you were going to win, or were you confident that you were going to get a favourable result for the miners?
Yeah, I was, and not only me, you know, a majority of the boys was saying the same thing. We, you know, as long as we can stick together on this, as long as we are united on this, we will come out victorious. And we could, you know, like I said, we weren't asking for, you know, more money and, you know, big bonuses and big payouts and things like that. We just wanted to keep our jobs. We just wanted to keep the communities going. That's all we wanted. And I was 100% convinced that we were going to win this.
So what was the day-to-day routine of a miner on strike in South Wales, in your experience?
Well, personally, I was still living with my parents at the time. So it was a case of get up in the morning, have a bit of breakfast, get out and see if I can pick a bag of coal for the day, or we'd go into the forest and cut some logs and things like that. You know, just anything that could, you know, provide for my parents, because I was the only breadwinner at the time at home. So obviously there was nothing coming in. I didn't have any money coming from anywhere, sort of thing, you know. So it was a case of, you know, get up in the morning, see what we could do for, you know, to keep the house warm, basically, during the winter. And then obviously we'd meet up in the local community centre and arrange, you know, to see if there was any help needed, you know, with soup kitchens, we used to call them. But they, you know, in all fairness to the women of the community, they put food together for us, like, you know, that was donated from, you know, people in supermarkets and things like that. So there was always something to do, you know, helping out here and there, and you know, just getting along with the day, basically.
So were you involved in any picketing of your own mine and other mines?
Not so much up around here. We were pretty good. We went down to Port Talbot. We were trying to stop iron ore going into the steelworks in Port Talbot. But it was a lot of people said the same thing. It was a lot of heavy-handedness from the police, and not, you know, I knew policemen from the villages that, you know, they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to be there. You know, there was a lot of animosity amongst this, you know, striking miners and the police, you know, in general. But like I said, it was the picket lines wasn't a nice place to be.
So how would you try and stop whatever it was, whatever particular day, going into the steelworks? I mean, what sort of tactics would you be using?
Yeah, we would basically just, you know, standing around shouting, you know, and you know, don't do it sort of thing, you know, and, you know, think, you know, you were not going to have a future either. If we lose ours, you're going to lose yours, you know. There was nothing more than that. You know, there was the odd occasion when some of the lorries would stop and the driver would get out and he'd come across and have a chat, you know, and he'd say, oh, look, you know, I got a mortgage, I got a couple of kids, I'm only doing it, you know, to keep them sort of going. And we were trying to put the same thing over back to him, you know, saying, yes, well, we have as well. We, you know, not so much myself, but, you know, there were, you know, men there saying, look, I got a mortgage, I got, you know, 2 or 3 kids as well. If I lose my job, guaranteed you're going to lose yours eventually, you know, within the next couple of years. So, you know, those were the sort of tactics. There was, you know, you've seen on the TV about the miners' strike when, you know, they were throwing stones at, you know, at buses and cars and that sort of thing. You know, nothing like that ever happened around here.
And did you ever have success in persuading some of the drivers to reconsider?
Yes, we did. Yeah. There were at least 3 I seen, you know, which is a lot of people. You know, I know 3 people don't sound a lot, but when you think that, you know, those 3 drivers that turned around on that day and said, right, okay, yeah, you know, I'm gonna back you up, and turn around, it was such a good feeling to think, right, well, okay, yeah, he's thinking of his future as well. You know, he's thinking about his children's future. So, you know, it was a good feeling.
And you mentioned the police. I mean, what were the police doing? Like, say, if you guys were on the picket line in Steelworks or Talbot, I mean, what were the police interactions you were having at the time?
Well, a lot of them would sort of, you know, like I said, if they were local, they sort of, you know, just normal chit-chat sort of thing. Like, you know, when, you know, don't go shoving too hard now, boys, otherwise we'll all end up under the wheels of the lorries and that sort of thing. And, you know, we totally understand where we're coming from. But, you know, like I said, going back to police presence, you know, all our operations would run from Nant to Fuslon, Miners Library. So there was a lot of boys went up to Orgreave, and when they come back, they were saying how atrocious things were up there. They were saying about the Metropolitan Police were up there in force, because like what Margaret Thatcher obviously knew, there was a good chance that if she sent, you know, busloads upon busloads of Metropolitan Police up there from London, there was a good chance that they had no relation to miners or striking miners whatsoever. So they were what they used to call them, the Maggie's boot boys. And like the boys used to say, well, here's the difference. We used to go in a local supermarket, or we'd stand outside supermarkets with, you know, the trolley for people to donate things, and the old people used to come out and say, oh, you know, well done what you're doing, boys, keep going, keep going. That same phrase was used up in Orgreave by the Metropolitan Police, because they used to hold up their paychecks, because money was no object. Money was no object. They'd hold up their paychecks and they'd be laughing in your face and saying, go on, boys, keep going, keep going. So that was the difference. That was the difference.
So would you say then that in South Wales, or in your experience, relations between the striking miners and the police was okay generally?
Yeah. I you know, like I said, I was playing rugby up in Glencorrog at the time, so I know 2 of the coaches were policemen, you know, and I knew them well. And even if you didn't know them, like I said, you knew they were from the area, either from up in the valleys, or they were from Neath or Talbot, because they just kept that discipline. There was nothing, you know, nasty or aggressive, and it worked both ways.
So was it difficult having a sort of like, well, you're on the same rugby team essentially. I mean, you're not getting paid on strike, and the police, just by their profession, even though it's probably very political, they've been led politically, they were trying to stop you fighting for your job and future. How did that relationship, was it between?
I think it was a situation where, you know, what could they do about it? You know, they were just doing their job as well. You know what I mean? They were called upon to police a situation, you know, and the situation was that we were striking to keep our communities going. They obviously they were sympathetic to what we were doing, which obviously put them on a spot. You know, I wouldn't have liked to be in their position, especially if they lived in a village or in the community. It wasn't a nice place for them to be either, like, you know.
Do you know if any of those police officers faced any hostility from any miners or families of miners?
I don't know. I don't think so. I wouldn't think so anyway. But like I said, you'll never know, because even after the strike, there was still things going on. Even today, you know, if somebody walked into a pub where somebody went back to work and they were standing there, you know, there's something gonna happen.
You often hear stories about police officers without their rank markings on, their correct markings, and the implication is that they're actually military.
Yeah.
Did you experience anything like that?
Yeah. Like I said, when we were on picket lines, they were, you know, they'd have. Sometimes we'd stand outside Margam, the entrance to the steelworks, but there'd only be, you know, a couple of dozen of us. And other times, if we knew there was a good shipload of coal coming in, or coke, or whatever it was coming in, obviously we'd up the amount of pickets that were coming down to do that duty on that day. So obviously the police would know, so they would send in the reinforcements as well, and a lot of them would be there with plain jackets on, black jackets, and you know, like an helmet on the top, no numbers or nothing. You know, people used to say that they were the army and the SAS and all sorts of things, and you didn't really want to know. I don't know. It was, like I said, as long as we just went there, done what we had to do, you know, while that shipment of iron ore or coal or whatever it was going in, if we could talk a couple of drivers out of it, we sort of, it was a winner for that day then.
So was there any physical confrontation or violence any times when you were on a picket line?
Yeah, in Talbot, yeah, they were. You know, like I said, a couple of boys would sort of, you know, they'd start pushing and shoving, and, you know.
So who would they be pushing? The police?
Yeah, the police would form a line, sort of arm linked, you know, around us to stop us sort of moving forward. And, you know, you can understand the hostilities was sort of, you know, tempers were getting raised, and, you know, to think that these lorry drivers were just going in there. And like I said, it was an open checkbook for these people. You know, the police and the people who were prepared to break a strike, it was an open checkbook. You know, these drivers who were going in, they could have named their price of what they wanted, and they would have gone. So it was a bit frustrating to think that, you know, they were doing it for all, you know, as much as they could get out of it, not thinking about what exactly was going to come to the future for them. But like I said, there was once everybody started getting you know, a bit irate and started pushing and shoving, people would fall over. A couple of police officers fall over. You know, they'd reinforce the rank sort of thing, and then they start pulling people out. You know, they'd sort of, you know, point him, and they'd pull them out. And if they pulled them out head first onto the concrete, well, that's the way it happened. And I did see a lot of that going on, yeah.
Was there times when you thought the police overstepped the mark with the force they used to try and control the miners? Definitely.
Not so, like I said, you know, the amount of times I went down to the picket line in Talbot and you know, that all the sort of local areas, there wasn't an actual lot going on, but, you know, a lot of the boys that, like I said, we picketed in different places from Nantafellon Miners Library, and boys went all over the country. And some of the stories that they said when they come back, you know, that especially Orgrave, you know, they were coming back and they'd open up, and it was like, you know, the police would sort of antagonise a lot of the boys. You know, they'd have the shields up and like the Zulu film, you know, and it'd be boom, 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 and you know, what was the point of all that, you know? Boom, 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 and then they'd open up, and then all the horses would bolt through, and, you know, they just hit anybody at random. If you were standing there, you'd have it, you know? And total, you know, unnecessary. No need of it whatsoever.
Move on here. I think as well, I'm right in saying there was some of the strikers in the steelworks climbed up the cranes to try and prevent. To try and prevent steelworks going about their job.
Mm. That was basically the cranes were offloading thousands and thousands of tons of iron ore. But not only iron ore, there was coal coming in from China, you know, Colombia, Poland, you know, and we got thousands and thousands and thousands of tons of coal underneath our feet, sort of thing, you know. So the production of steel that was going on in Talbot was due to the supply of coal from abroad. So we were just trying to make a statement by sort of trying to stop that from happening. just to show that, you know, there's coal coming from abroad, and we can produce as much as you need from on the doorstep.
I mean, that must have been, like, from just a personal point of view, heartbreaking to see all this foreign coal coming into Wales and knowing that, like you said, there's tons of it underneath your feet.
Yeah, it still is now. You know, it still is now, and God bless all them boys and well, boys, girls, women, everybody that's working in Tartar at the moment. You know, they're going to face an uncertain future themselves. You know, and you know, part of the determination of the solidarity in South Wales is that we were promised a coal mine in Margam super pit. And we were going to produce all the coal for Aberthaw Power Station, which meant, you know, electricity would have been a lot cheaper for everybody in South Wales. Carbon capture, they were using carbon capture during the 80s and 90s. Even then, in Australia and America, you know, it burned coal cheap, you know, cleaner and cheaper than gas. You know, that was the sort of future that we were looking for, you know, and like I said, you know, we floating on it. We're floating on coal, and we can burn it clean, and we can, you know, produce thousands of tons of it every year, you know. But why wasn't that listened to, like, you know?
What was the general attitude towards strikebreakers or people who continued to work during the strike?
We were lucky around here. There was the odd one or two that you know, tried to go back, and you know, I think one or two of them actually did for a couple of shifts. You know, they used to say, right, well, you know, yeah, I got to go back to work. I got a wife and kids and a mortgage, and well, yeah, that was the part of the struggle. That was everybody's struggle. It wasn't only their struggle; it was everybody's struggle. You know, so. I had no sympathy. To be honest. When you know, the majority of us had no sympathy whatsoever with the striking miner. And you know, once a scab, always a scab was the saying at the time. You know what I mean? If you were a scab, you'd always be a scab. You know, for 50, 60 years, if you lived another 50, 60 years, you'd always be a scab.
So just explain to people then, perhaps who are not from South Wales, or maybe they're not from a working class area, what is so particularly what do you find so offensive about a scab or someone who works through a strike?
Well, when you think of going back, you know, just say 100 years ago, you know, these communities where we are now, men worked hard to try and form unions and things. Everything was done on the quiet, you know, to try and form a union, to try and make things better. Because at one time, miners used to work for coal owners, and the coal owner would pay them in checks, little silver or brass checks. The miners would have the checks on a Friday. They could only spend them checks in the coal miners' shops, the coal owners' shops, you know, things like that. But little things, you know, it was hardship. It was hard graft. Life was hard. So, you know, they tried to make things better for themselves, form a union, tried to make things a little bit better, get a decent wage. You know, schooling for your children, all that hard work of, you know, and eventually it built up to one of the strongest unions in the country. You know, the NUM was, if not the strongest union in the country. And then you get people will just let all that go, you know, above their head and think, I'm going to go back to work. You know, couldn't see the sense in it. I had no pity for them. We were all in the same boat.
And you mentioned earlier about, just you give the scenario of bumping into somebody who's a strikebreaker or a scab in a pub. I mean, I'm right in saying those sort of animosities, if that's the right word, continue to today?
Yeah. You don't see them. You know, I know, you know, a few. I haven't seen them for years and years and years. Obviously, you know, when you look back on it, they must have thought of, you know, of the consequences of going back to work. They must have thought about it, you know. But obviously, I don't know what the reasons were. Like I said, they can say, yeah, okay, we were struggling. We didn't have any, you know, food on the table, but nobody did. We were all in the same boat. And you know, unity was strength, and that's what we had to keep in mind, you know.
So what arguments were you using then to try and persuade people who were struggling then?
Yeah, well, those reasons. It'd have taken generations to get where we are today. We got paid holidays. We got a pitted baths where we can go and shower and wash when we come up the pit. We got a sickness schemes going on and things like that. All of that was achieved through unions. Those things weren't given to you out of the goodness of the National Coal Board or the mine owners. All that was achieved through the unions that was formed during hardship through generations, and that's what it was all about. That's what we had to keep.
How did the miners survive? The striking miners survive with no wages coming in for 12 months? I mean, what processes do you build up, or how did you survive? I mean, how did you eat? Where did you get your food from?
Yeah, a lot of it, like I said, we had a lot of donations coming from Hungary, Poland, Yugoslavia, all the sort of them sort of countries, communist countries, if you like. Yeah, they understood what was going on in the UK at the time. Like I said, we used to gather food parcels and things. The local women's groups and things like that would put things together, and we'd go every sort of Thursday afternoon and pick up your little carrier bag with bare necessities. There was like flour, potatoes, and things. You'd have egg and chips nearly every day. But no, it was hardship, and everybody had to just get on with it. You know what I mean? But in all fairness, the amount of donations we had from local people, businesses, was overwhelming. It was hardship, but it was we were getting through. We were getting through. How long we could have lasted, we don't really know. But we just took it one day at a time.
And I believe it was like the wives and the women support groups, they were literally feeding the picketers, or the striking miners.
It was a case of, we used to go to the community centre up in Croesero at the time. I was living with my parents. And whatever donations were coming in, the women would get together. They'd make stews and, like curries and pies and whatever they could put together. Just to keep people going, and it was very, very grateful. And we went on demonstrations. We were invited down to Portsmouth Polytechnic, and invited us down to accept a cheque that money that they had raised over the couple of months. And we went down to, I think it was a bus full of us, 50 odd of us went down from Nantllffellon. And we were overwhelmed how people would, come together. Portsmouth, a naval port, and you wouldn't expect it would do. But they, in all fairness, to the gays and lesbians movement in support of the miners, absolutely fantastic. Donating hundreds and hundreds of pounds, And we went down there that day, and we done a bit of a march around Portsmouth, and a lot of older people would sort of give you all that sort of thing, like they totally didn't understand, didn't want to know. But in all fairness, it was absolutely fantastic. And then like I said, you come home and you tell these stories on to people that unbelievable. The support that we had from outside was phenomenal.
You mentioned there about the older people not understanding or being against the strike. Do you think in a lot of cases, just some people just didn't understand? They couldn't understand the concept of what you were striking for, like people in the big cities and the more wealthier areas, cosmopolitan areas. Yeah. They just didn't realise what life was like and what the strike was about.
They're not community people, are they? They don't live in communities. You know what I mean? You've only got to go as far as Cardiff, and people live next door to each other. They probably don't even know each other's names. That's the difference. We were in, like I said, we were in a situation where we lived in close-knit communities. That's what we were fighting for. That's what we wanted to keep. But then when we went out of our communities, we realised that, perhaps this thing that was going on throughout the mining communities all over the UK wasn't recognised in the bigger cities. A lot of people knew that it was going on because it was on the news every night. It was on every newspaper every day. But they didn't want to know. It wasn't their fight, so they wasn't interested. Margaret Thatcher was the best thing since sliced bread as far as they was concerned. So they didn't want to know our side of the story. They would just, obviously, press and media give us a slating all the way through.
I mean, I can't remember which paper it was, or it might have been a politician. I think they described the miners as the enemy within.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you feel to be, well, almost turned in as they reply you were evil, that you were on the wrong side of the argument?
We had that from the beginning. That was the case from the beginning. It was only if you had a chance to sit and talk to somebody that was out of the circle, that didn't really know what was going on within the mining communities, if you could have a chance and sit and talk to these people and tell them exactly why we were coming out on strike, why we were so determined to turn the decision that Maggie was making, to try and turn that around. That's all we were trying to do, So yes, like I said, we were slated through the media and the press right from the start. So we were the sort of enemy within, which was, at the end of the day, as far as I know, that communities that will always stick together no matter what.
At what stage did you realise that this strike might not be like the previous strikes, and that it was going to be protracted? And at what stage did you think that you might not win?
It was coming, like I said, the strike started in March '84. Coming up to Christmas was a realisation, I think, that everybody started to think, we were hoping to be back by now. This is not working out as we've planned. So anyway, we got Christmas over and done with, and we enjoyed it the best that we could. So after Christmas, people were obviously borrowing money to pay for toys for the kids and that sort of thing. So I think after Christmas, when everybody sat down and thought, right, well, how much longer can we go? I think it was then that it was the height of people saying that they were, I don't know, I might go back, and if somebody else went first, I'd go as well. There was all that sort of thing starting to happen. So you knew, eventually it would have to come to either Arthur Scargill and McGregor supposed to have been, but McGregor was just a puppet for Maggie one year, to be honest with you. But it was a case of somebody had to get around the table and negotiate one way or other. So it was, I think we knew, it was inevitable that, very shortly something would have to go.
And what was the opinion of the miners on the tactics of Arthur Scargill? I mean, how was he held in regard in your experience? Welsh, Arthur Scargill was voted by the majority of the UK miners to lead us. He was the president of the National Union of Mine Workers. So obviously, Arthur was like Marmite. You either loved him or you hated him, At the end of the day, like I said, he was voted on as the president of the NUM to lead us into any disputes that were going on, and that was it. In all fairness, I always thought Arthur was the right man for the job. He was another one who was slated as the enemy within. I think if I spoke to Arthur Scargill personally on a couple of occasions, and like I said, the things that he was saying, that make sense now, and at the time, really thought, well, is my community gonna disappear if we lose this strike? I don't know, but it did, and all the other communities have as well. I know it's easy to say in hindsight, but could the tactics have been done any different? Do you think, the miners' tactics?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think that the only way that we could have change things is that if we had more time to prepare, I think, if we had more time to prepare, like I said, we knew something was going to happen, but I think if the government would put different scenarios on the table to, select different options, we didn't want to keep pits open that were, were unviable or losing, massive amounts of money. Yeah, that didn't make sense. Okay, if the pit was unviable, it was losing millions of pounds every year. Look, boys are working hard for nothing. We're going to have to let it go, but there was no options at all. She stamped with an iron fist on the table saying, right, we're getting rid of coal mining throughout the UK, starting from now. Cottonwood was the first one to go. So I don't think there was anything other than what we done could have been changed any different. Only, like I said, if we had more time to prepare with the government, with a sensible government, perhaps things could have come to some sort of resolve. I don't know.
So the miners went back to work in March, I believe. Can you explain the process of going back to work? Were you balloted about going back to work? How did that work? Obviously it came from Arthur Scargill down to the different lodges. And just explain the process as far as you can remember.
Well, I think everybody had enough. Well, we'd had enough by, like I said, by Christmas. We thought, a couple of months out, and things would have sort of come to a head, and we could have done something to get us back into work. But it didn't happen. So by the time March of '85 come around, everybody had enough. Everybody, the whole country had enough. There was only so much people could donate. There was only so much sympathy people could give, and that sort of thing. So, so come March, we voted on, on a return to work, as long as we could go through the procedure of pit closures. That meant that if we agreed to the pit to close, we would vote on that. Obviously, if the pit wasn't making any money, or it was, flogging it dead, or if they ran out of coal or whatever, for whatever reason. If we went through that system, well, yeah, great, we'll go along with that. But obviously, we went back to work thinking that would be the case, but it wasn't. It was a case of shut down the UK coal industry, and I think the last one went last year or the year before up in Yorkshire. It was awful. It was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. Watching. On the TV, the winding gear being demolished, and all them years, of people, being close to each other in work, and then they come up the pit and have a pint, and or they have a game of snooker and play football, the brass bands, the male voice choirs, and all that sort of thing. It's gone, and there's no way it's going to come back. I can't see any future for the valleys and the small communities unless, well, I don't know what's going to happen.
So, can you remember how you felt actually on the day you walked back into work?
Yeah, I remember walking back into the pitted baths and sitting on the bench by the side of my locker, and I'm thinking, right, well, what was that 12 months all about? It was a struggle. It was not only for myself, obviously, it was a struggle for everybody, even for the people that went back to work. We all struggled, we all went through it. But I remember sitting on a bench out, by my locker, and I, getting my working clothes back on and going back underground, and it all went pretty quick. A couple of weeks it was not forgotten, but we got back into the routine. But always on the back of your mind was. When is it going to hit us? When are we going to go? I think we had about 4 years out of Blindant after the strike, and then that was it. That went. But fortunately for myself and quite a few others, we went to Tower Colliery, and Tower had through the government they said that it was unviable anymore, and it's we've run out of coal and we're going to have to close it. So we decided we'd chip in, some money out of our redundancy, and we'll buy it on if that would be possible. And trying to make us look as if we didn't know what we were talking about. But we got together and done that process. And we had 12 years of coal mining and tower colliery out of it. So it just goes to show how wrong they were from the beginning. They didn't have a clue what was going on.
It must have given you a lot of satisfaction when you guys as a community bought tower colliery in effect.
Yeah.
And carried on mining there, like you said, for 12 years.
Yeah. It was, and people would say, what you do for a living, you go on holidays and things, you meet your kids, whatever, all mingle, and you know how it is. You have a drink with them in the evenings and things, and they say, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm a coal miner. He's a coal miner. I didn't realise there was any mines left in the country. And I'd say, yeah, I'm working in tower colliery in South Wales. And they'd say, oh, didn't you buy it out for yourself or something? Yeah, oh, good on you, It's a pity that didn't work right throughout the coalfield, right throughout the coalfield. But we tried it and it worked. And yeah.
What, you mentioned going on holidays there. When you even now, when you meet people on holidays, people from England or Scotland or whatever island, and you tell them you're a coal miner, and did they ever ask you about the strike? Is that a question that ever comes up?
Normally the first question. That's normally the first question. What was you like being on strike? It was a good chance to put over the miners' side of the story. Because like I said, somebody living outside of the communities or outside the mining environment would sort of only see what the press and the media wanted them to see, So when you give your version, it was always a surprise to them how difficult things really were, and what they totally understood then exactly what you was striking for. It wasn't a case of striking for more money or bigger bonuses but nothing like that. That wasn't the case. It was just keeping our communities alive.
Obviously, even though there's massive hardships, striking, no money coming in on the picket lines, was there any humour or dark humour even to try and break the tension?
We always kept our ear close to the ground for a few ways of earning a couple of quid. One of the boys knocked my door one morning and said, look, there's a farm down in the Gower looking for people to pick potatoes. So he said, are you interested? And I said, well, yeah. He said, right, if we can get 5 of us together to fill the car up, he said, we'll go down and we'll pick some potatoes, pay for the petrol, and we'll have a couple of quid out of it. Right, great. So anyway, he goes down to this farmer down the Gower, and he was over the moon. Because what he was telling us was, we get students here, he said, picking potatoes, and he said, soon they've earned enough money to have a weekend on a pop. He said, we don't see him again. So he was over the moon. So anyway, he said, what happens? He said, I'll drive and it was a beautiful place. These fields down the Gower were right on the coast, right on, you could throw a stone into the sea. So he said, what I'll do, I'll fetch a tractor down and I'll cut all the tops off the potatoes. And then he said, another machine will come off and churn them all up. So he said, that's all I want you to do, and is to pick them up, put them into baskets, and then weigh them into sacks. And he said, I'll pay you per sack per day. I think we were doing, something like 30 or 40 sacks each, which was a long day. And we were getting, like 20 odd pence a sack, whatever it was. So anyway, after the first day, we all sort of, yeah, that was okay. We've earned sort of, 10 quid or whatever, which was a lot of money in 1984, especially when there was nothing coming in. So anyway, we all get back in the car. We stopped in Swansea to put petrol in, and the guy who was driving the car, he put the petrol in. So anyway, we come back home. So when I was the first one out up in Croesero, it was a good hour's drive from where we were. So the car stopped outside the house, and the door opened. I couldn't get up. I don't know whether you pick potatoes. Honestly, I thought I'd had a tetanus injection in both legs because you were keeled over, sort of picking potatoes all day. Unbelievable. But no, it was good fun. And like I said, we earned some money. But the farmer asked if we could come back next year as well. But no, it didn't. That didn't happen, but no, it was there was humour as well as the the sadness part of it as well.
And I mean, if someone just mentions the miners' strike to you, I mean, what's the first thing that pops in your head? What's your first thought?
I think normally when somebody mentions the miners' strike to me, it's a place where I don't really want to go back to. You know, we've done it, we tried it, we were hoping to save the communities and jobs for the future and things like that. You know, so at the end of the day, it was an hard time. It was a time that will never happen again. It'll never happen again. We'll never have a strike on that scale again in this country because unions are gone. Unions are gone. So I find it's just a pity. It's just a shame that it didn't work out for us.
And I mean, how are the communities now? Was it 40 years later?
Never the same. They'll never be the same. Like I said earlier on, you know, I think every community had a silver band. Nearly every community had a male voice choir, rugby teams, football teams, you know, that sort of thing. There was always something going on in the community. Now we just try and make the best of what we got, basically, because there's nothing for the young people in the community anymore. They all got to travel, you know, into towns and cities for work, you know, which is sad, you know, considering that everybody living in the community worked in the community more or less. But there we are. It is what it is.
Okay, Nick, anything to add or any questions you want to ask?